Short films, particularly animated short films, are pretty cool. I remember a couple of years ago, I used to watch a lot of these, and I always enjoyed the sheer artistry and interesting concepts they would provide. One of the many short films I did watch around this time was that of Fueled, and while I did enjoy it when I first saw it, I didn't really think about it all that much afterwards. Not because the film was forgettable or anything like that, far from it in fact, I had just moved on to other things. But when someone suggested that I should make a video on it, it made me reconsider and rewatch the animation after all these years. And I loved it. There's so much about this small project that is so well done, so clever, so beautiful, that it stands above every other short film I've watched over my time, and is by far my favourite one. But what makes Fueled so special? Why am I glazing this film? Well, let's look into that and see what makes Fueled so beautiful. But first, some background information. Hello and welcome to another episode of A Brief History. Today's episode, Fueled. Ready, set, go. During 2020, a group of students from Sheridan College in Ontario, Canada were tasked with creating an animated short film. This group would later be known online as KilledTheCat Productions. An Instagram account with the same name would later launch in November and would proceed to catalogue the development of the film up until its release in December 2021 and even a bit after. Later in November of 2021, the KilledTheCat Productions YouTube account would be created and the short film would be set to premiere on the 1st of December 2021. Since its premiere, it's garnered over 10 million views and a fan following, touching the hearts of millions with its story of revenge and grief. The core KilledTheCat team was composed of about 13 people. Meet the cast! Michelle Howe was a storyboard artist, project manager, as well as an animator for the short film. His little Fueled Sona type character can be seen in the background in the beginning shots of the film, talking to Catherine Ivanhoff, a layout artist, background painter, and a visual development artist. Visual development artists, according to fucking Walt Disney Animation Studios, craft characters and worlds using a strong sense of appeal, color, design, and composition. Presumably, they designed the look of the characters and the world of Fueled, along with all the other visual development artists. Speaking of visual development artists, Fawn Chan was one of those, as well as a layout artist and project manager. They can be seen in the first flashback of the film on the bus along with Aruna Kaney, a background painter and another visual development artist. According to their self-intro on the KilledTheCat Productions Instagram page, they play Stardew Valley. Shout out Stardew Valley, I guess. Someone else who talks about games in their Instagram self-intro is Subin Jang, a visual development artist and animator who attributes the choice to make the main protagonist of the film Kathy a cat to herself as the self-proclaimed cat lover. They appear in the ice skating flashback along with Stalin Liu, a Soviet politician and revolutionary who led the Soviet Union from 1924 until his death into 1953. Wrong Stalin. Stalin Liu was actually a storyboard artist and background painter. They could be seen ice skating in the aforementioned flashback along with Georgia Quinn, a visual development artist and animator who did multiple animation tests for the film. She is also known as Jaegers, an artist and popular member of the animation meme community. You may recognize her for this brown animal character. She is also in this animation in the ice skating flashback, as well as Jizu Kim, a visual development artist and background painter. Going back to that first flashback on the bus, behind Aruna you can see Ido Hayashi, an art director, visual development artist and FX animator. In one post from the KilledTheCat Instagram which shows off storyboards for a deleted scene, Ido is the thumbnail artist. The storyboards for this deleted scene, however, were done by Emily Zhu, a storyboard artist and animator. She could be seen in the opening shot along with Michelle and Catherine, as a paramedic behind the ambulance. Behind Ido on the bus there's Daniel Blake, a story artist, animator and sound effects guy. At the back of the bus there's Josh, also known as Young Hack Jang, I'm sorry if I'm butchering any of these names, who was a storyboard artist and animator. Finally, there's Sebastian Rutten, the main composer for the film. Fun fact about him is that his Fueled Sona type character was going to be a parrot, but then he changed his mind and wanted to be a capybara instead. The artist for all these headshots, that being Emily, wasn't going to make him another headshot, however, as she had already made one of him as a parrot. Sebastian then proceeded to draw his own headshot as a capybara. Very majestic. Okay, I think that's all of the info I could gather regarding Fueled's development. Now onto the short film itself. There's a lot to go through here, but I think a good start would be with the story. The general story of Fueled doesn't really sound like a lot on paper, the short film's description summing it up in one sentence. However, I think it's the way it's told that makes it so great, using flashbacks and moments of tears to really make the audience sympathetic for the protagonist, who is depicted as a sort of anti-hero. The short begins in media res at a crime scene. Ambulances and police cars are surrounding a small house which has been covered in yellow tape. At the foot of the house we can find our protagonist, a small, dishevelled Catwoman currently swaddled in a red blanket, a common item given to victims by authorities for comfort at crime scenes. With that knowledge, we can concur that this woman was involved in whatever happened at this house, although we don't know completely yet. A shot placed further into the scene allows us to get a better look at this woman. She's shaking and looking into space, possibly still shocked, as most victims would be. A policeman approaches the woman, holding a clipboard of sorts. He takes a paper off the board and hands it to the woman. This seems to ground the woman enough out of her daze to look at what's on the paper. It's a police sketch of a dog with a mad look in its eyes. Considering that this is a police sketch at a crime scene, and that the people in this world are all animals, we could say that this dog may be the perpetrator of whatever happened at this house. The Catwoman. I don't know why I keep calling her Catwoman. I called her Kathy in the last section, so might as well just keep doing that. Looks at the paper for a brief moment before becoming enraged, crumpling the paper with an aggressive grip. In the next scene, we cut to Kathy driving through a wooded area. We get a small shot of her car's fuel gauge, showing that a low amount of fuel is left. She looks around into the forest, possibly looking for an area to stop, or even just an area to refuel, but it's a forest. I don't think you're going to find a petrol station in the forest. Her car then proceeds to break down, and we get a very snazzy little title card, with no area to refuel or any sign of civilization at all for that matter to go to. Kathy's most likely feeling hopeless here, hence the tired, annoyed hitting of her car horn, most likely headbutting the horn button as the universal sign of tired frustration. As her car horn goes off, we get some shots of the inside of Kathy's car, showing the police sketch hung over the rearview mirror, a map with pins and glued on pieces of paper, almost like a detective's investigation board. We get another, more detailed shot of this map, where an address is circled and labelled. Around the circled house, we see pictures of Kathy with another cat, with a newspaper cutout showing that same cat with the headline, "Robbery leads to one death." Now, there's a lot of fuel for speculation here. See what I did there? Like, for example, who is this new cat person? Why does Kathy care about him so much to keep newspapers and old photos of him? What was their relationship? And was the robbery to do with that crime scene seen earlier? Don't worry, small brain cells. Everything will be explained in due time. After a long good session of hitting the car horn, Kathy decides to take another look at her map for any petrol stations nearby, and miraculously finds one, which is just in the middle of the woods. No roads leading to it or anything, it's just in the woods, I guess. Upon deciding to go to this station, she then has a look at her wallet to find that she's brokey.
I'm gonna start cooking. Fridge, an onion, and some lettuce. Now, get my knife, cut my onion, start to cut my onion.
Oh, chef.
Yo, that's me down there, I just realised. Look at that, oh my god. She then looks up at the police sketch, which then gives a more in-depth shot of the thing, detailing in particular the dog's manic eyes. They're hyper-realistic, with blood and gore. She then takes a moment, possibly thinking that due to her lack of money to pay for any petrol, she may have to stoop to the dog's level of crime. She then proceeds to get out of the car. We cut to a flashback. We don't know how far back, but it's definitely the past, as Kathy seems to be a lot younger here. Maybe in her 20s, I don't know. She's about to step off a bus and almost trips and falls out, but she's saved by... Who the fuck is this guy, man? The cat smiles at Kathy, who smiles back, both visually having chemistry with one another. This moment is then cut short as we cut back to the dark forest. Kathy has now arrived at the petrol station. She grabs a petrol tank and takes a glance inside, where a pig, presumably the manager or at least a worker at the station, is reading porn and gets naked. Seeing that he's distracted, Kathy makes her move. She moves over to a pump and begins to fill the tank, glancing back at the station window from time to time. Just when she's filled up her tank, however, the pig comes out for a smoke break, and they lock eyes.
Hello, sir. I was going to pay for this. Let me go get my wallet.
The pig tries to stop Kathy from stealing the petrol tank, spilling some in the process. At one point, Kathy drops to the floor, only to get up and... She almost trips onto the ice. But luckily, the cat from the bus is there, holding her steady. He then proceeds to laugh in her face.
She's such a dumb bitch!
Snap back to reality. And Kathy is clawing at the pig's leg and tries to reach for the tank, which is now in the pig's possession. This results in the pig kicking Kathy off of him and into a shelf of glass motor oil bottles. The pig begins to walk away, Kathy now unconscious from the furious kick. We cut to another flashback. This time, the cat from the bus and Kathy are dancing together to music being played on vinyl. The music in question is Let Me Call You Sweetheart by Henry Burr and the Peerless Quartet from 1911, in case you were interested. The song has been played by many different artists since then, most notably Bing Crosby in 1934. Going back to the scene, the cat and Kathy share a nice moment together, eventually punctuated by Kathy resting on the cat and the cat giving her a little kiss. I think it's obvious now that these two are in a romantic relationship, the flashbacks detailing how they met and the memories they made together. Kathy eventually comes to her senses, taking a glance at the pig walking back into the station, it reminding her of the perpetrator on that fateful night before the police arrived. She grabs a bottle, it's heard being broken, and the pig looks back. Kathy lunges at him. His mouth opens in gasp, dropping his lit cigarette to the floor onto the puddle of petrol spilled earlier. I don't think he's coming back from that one, I'm gonna be honest. We cut to another flashback, with Kathy and her cat boyfriend, the two both in bed together. Not like that, shut up. The boyfriend seems to have been reading a book, and Kathy is already fast asleep. He gives Kathy a kiss before closing his book and turning the bedside lamp off, joining Kathy in her sleep. Kathy seems to have survived the petrol station explosion and comes to her senses once more. She glances around before seeing the petrol tank. She takes her chance and grabs the tank, running back to her car. She tears open the fuel cap and hastily fills the car up with petrol. Afterwards, she jumps into her car and begins to start it up. She grabs her map and has a brief look at it before looking once more at the police sketch. The paper now teared, the dog now missing his eyes. But in replacement is hers, just as crazed and manic. She jolts back, a wave of clarity washing over her. She looks into the rearview mirror again, her eyes now more fearful. She's covered in blood. It runs down her head and her hands are dripping with it. This could symbolize the sudden guilt Kathy must feel after potentially just taking a life and destroying property, physically having blood on her hands. She looks at the map and the pictures on it. She gravitates towards one in particular, one depicting Kathy and her cat boyfriend's wedding day. It all comes back now. The time they spent together, talking, laughing, dancing. It all seemed so idyllic. That was until the robbery occurred. A dog had broken into their house and ended up killing Kathy's husband. The last moments she spent with him were lying on the ground, watching him bleed out with tears in his eyes. This whole time she had sought revenge for her husband, only now realizing that in doing so, she became more like the man who killed him. Tears well up in her eyes as Kathy grieves for her husband. She collects herself before looking back into the woods, the fire from the petrol station still glowing through the trees. She decides to, instead of driving away and continuing her ploy of revenge, clean up the mess she's made and call the authorities, tears still running down her face. The short ending with Kathy, phone to her head, staring up at the burning petrol station. As I said initially, I believe the way this story is told is really what makes it great. For one, not a single word is uttered by any of the characters throughout the film's duration, meaning every story element is told visually, which is an impressive feat to do successfully without confusing the audience. Not only that, but to put focus on the more emotional sides of the story, rather than just sticking to action or mystery, is unique for plots which focus on revenge. There aren't a lot of revenge stories where the main character gives up, seeing continuing as stooping down to the antagonist's level, so I'd admire Field for being inventive. The beginning scene at the house is a great microcosm of the film's plot, introducing Kathy, the incident at the house, the antagonist, as well as Kathy's motives all seamlessly. It's a great foundation for the rest of the film to build upon. The use of flashbacks are a great contrast to the main plot and serve as a way to keep the audience invested, as each new flashback gives more context to Kathy's motives. I also like how each flashback parallels the moment that played before it. Kathy gets out of her car in the present but walks out of a bus in the following flashback. Kathy is in bed asleep in a flashback and wakes up surrounded by flames in the present. All of the scenes with Kathy at the petrol station, before it blows up, really achieve a sense of tension as she constantly looks into the station as she's filling up her tank, and there's a brief standoff style moment before she tries to run off, the tension only really being released when Kathy's finally booted into the shelf. The Chekhov's gun style use of the spilled petrol, the pig's smoking habit, and the combining of those two elements is also really cool. I could go on forever about how cathartic the realization scene is, and how it really makes you sympathetic towards Kathy, the audience now fully understanding her motives for avenging her husband here. Everything comes together really well here, and it really makes you feel for Kathy as well as understand why she wouldn't want to continue her revenge plot. It all serves as a message to the audience that fighting fire with fire like this won't help you feel better, and that there are better ways of seeking closure. One final thing I would like to mention is the contrast of the ending and beginning. Well, it's less a contrast of the ending and beginning, and more the reuse of symbolism from the beginning in the ending. The opening scene is a crime scene, the police arriving most likely due to someone, possibly Kathy, calling 911. And since she only starts to seek revenge after she's shown the police sketch, we could also assume that she still has some sort of innocence about her here. This is contrasted with the ending, as Kathy has lost her innocence after blowing up a petrol station, but still decides to call the authorities, the act of doing so possibly being indicative of Kathy's decision to revert from a path of revenge. Again, the visual storytelling in the short film is immaculate.
You know who else is immaculate? The art and animation.
I'm surprised that I'm only talking about this now, but the art and animation of Field is incredible, especially for a small group of students. The development of the art, in particular the design of the characters and backgrounds, seems to have been a group effort, as many of the members of KilledTheCat Productions are credited as visual development artists, which could mean that almost everyone working on Field was able to have a say in what the characters and world generally looked like. This can be further proven when looking at the concept art seen on the KilledTheCat Instagram, where a collage of styles and renditions can be seen, all of which eventually condensing into the final design, which incorporates elements from many of the original concepts. The choice to make all of the characters in the short anthropomorphic animals, I think, was an incredibly smart choice. I saw one review of the short film which wrote off the decision as callow, but I believe that's a very cynical way to look at it. A good character design is able to tell you a lot about that character just based on their appearance, and considering that we, as humans, project a lot of personality traits onto animals already, having that character be a talking animal may help in achieving that goal. For instance, foxes are often considered as cunning, sly, and deceitful. I'm really sorry for this comparison. Zootropolis, also known as Zootopia, the character of Nick Wilde is a deceitful and sly conman who is depicted as a fox, and we can gather those facts about his personality just by looking at him and the choice of animal he is. In Field, the same sort of knowledge can be applied. Kathy is a cat, and cats are often depicted in literature as independent, cunning, and graceful. This may not seem like Kathy to begin with, but she does show instances of these traits throughout the short film. She's independent because her husband got eliminated in Fortnite. She's cunning when trying to steal the petrol from the station, and she has shown grace, but not in the physical sense. Grace, according to the best sources of all, dictionary.com and Oxford Languages, can also mean courteous goodwill. And I don't know about you, but calling the police after you've just uncourteously blown up the local Texaco shows a lot of goodwill. You could also say that Kathy's relationship with Grace is that she falls from Grace throughout the short film, and only really reclaims it at the end. This cat is very complex, but I think you get the idea. As much as I would love to take a deep dive into the short film and its characters, I don't want to stretch a 9-minute short film into a 9-hour video essay. Going back to the choice of anthropomorphic animals, I believe it was a very smart decision, as animals being associated with characters can tell you a lot about those characters just based on their appearance and the animal they are. This helps Field massively, as there's no dialogue in the film to display personality, so the audience has to suss out the characters based on how they look. On another note, the backgrounds are amazing and really do set the stage for for this film, each one being lovingly crafted and painted. They seem to take slight inspiration from illustrations of mid-century modernism, as seen in the use of dynamic shapes and bold colouring. Actually, there's a lot of elements outside of just the backgrounds that really seem to take inspiration from 1960s iconography and illustration, such as the use of a petrol station, the clothes Kathy wears. Hell, even some of Kathy's original designs seem to echo the stylings of cats from that design movement. That's actually really cool. I wonder why they picked mid-century modernism as inspiration, because if anything, the film is a grim juxtaposition of 1960s happy nuclear family values. Or maybe that's the point. I mean, the design of the characters and backgrounds all have a sense of grit and realism to them, coupled with their inspired elements. So maybe this was a purposeful choice in order to contrast the realistic crime, tragedy and revenge featured in the short film with the almost idyllic perception of reality portrayed in the mid-century modernism inspirations. But why would they even have this contrast to begin with? Well, the story of Fjord is the story of a woman that's had her husband taken away from them. A squandered, potential nuclear family! Holy shit! I'm getting ahead of myself. The backgrounds are also great at establishing the mood and tone of the scene that they're used in, and they do this through their brilliant use of colour and lighting. Fjord actually has a lot of different colour palettes when it comes to backgrounds, each one representing a scene and its tone and mood. The flashbacks use a lot of soft pinks and warm pastel colours, colours that are associated with warmth, comfort and love. The use of these colours could be argued as representing the idyllic and happy feel of these scenes, showing the cute romance between these two soon-to-be tragic characters. In complete contrast, however, the gloomy and oppressive blues and greens of the petrol station really hammer in the grim reality that Kathy finds herself in, resorting to petty crimes in order to continue her goal of avenging her late husband. Lastly, the bright orange used in the final moments of the short film post-petrol station explosion could represent chaos and fiery emotion, which perfectly fits the mood of the scene, as it's where Kathy's emotions are at their most prevalent. You could also argue that the orange, at least at the very end of the short, could represent salvation, as Kathy begins to steer off the path of revenge and physically moves towards the light, that being the fire. How does this short film have no dialogue but have so much to look through and analyse? It's beautiful. Shut the fuck up! Although I'm not a complete expert on everything animation, I can still appreciate the detail and level of care Fjord displays in its animation. Due to the short deciding not to have any spoken dialogue, it was important for the characters to communicate to the audience visually, and Fjord does an amazing job at that. The facial expressions are incredibly varied and, well, expressive, each face instantly telling you the character's feelings in that moment. Similarly, the movement also communicates a lot of the emotion of the character to the audience, all depending on the speed and weight of the movement itself. The movement also seems to make great use of major principles of animation, such as anticipation, staging, timing, and many others that I probably missed. The facial expressions and movement of the characters complement each other very well, and it's all done so effortlessly. Speaking of effortlessly, things that may be perceived as difficult to animate, such as characters constantly changing directions, liquid effects, explosions, and fire, are all done amazingly. The liquids and explosions especially have a great sense of weight and realism to them. Lastly, I wanted to briefly mention the highlighting of the characters. It's a great method of separating them from the background and really makes them pop out of the scene. It also seems to be an element inspired loosely by mid-century modernism illustrations, as those often had similar highlights. The addition of bloom on the highlights and general lighting, however, is completely unique to Fjord and is a great atmospheric touch. Now, an element that I think goes quite underappreciated when people discuss this short is that of the sound effects and music. I believe Daniel Blake, the person in charge of the sound effects for Fjord, did a really good job. For one, the soundscape is very realistic throughout the film, the ambience never really being over-exaggerated with things like whistling winds or massive striking thunderstorms. This straight, almost deadpan approach really helps the film in achieving a believable atmosphere to the audience, and persuades them into taking the film seriously, which helps Fjord in its more emotional moments. The soundscape being real realistic, I believe, also reflects the narrative, as despite the film being a cartoon and using cartoon characters, it deals with very mature topics, such as grief and violence. This contrast between the stylized cartoon visuals and the played straight soundscape may also be narratively significant, as it gives the effect of something not being quite right. Cartoons are supposed to be whimsical, light-hearted, and disregard reality, so when Mickey Mouse plays the teeth of this animal, why doesn't it make the xylophone noises, goddammit? Well, due to the death of Minnie Mouse during a robbery-turned-murder, Mickey's life wasn't the same. The whimsy and magic that had once been in his life had been stripped away from him, and now Mickey is a shadow of his former self, only longing to see Minnie again and have that magic back. This is essentially the idea Fueled wants to give you, only with its own characters. Kathy's life was once so whimsical and almost fairy tale-like with her husband, but it was all taken away from her, and now she must live in a world barren of the magic her husband once gave her, live in reality, and the soundscape reflects this. This idea is only complemented more so when you then compare the sound effects and foley of the flashbacks to those of the present. I'm gonna sound so weird for saying this, but they're very intimate? As in having a cozy or relaxed atmosphere as described by Oxford Languages. Everything from the sounds of the bus and the ice skating, to the kissing and the subtle breathing of Kathy sleeping, it's all very soft and gentle. You're not gonna hear a massive crash or boom here. This furthers the idyllic, whimsical feeling these flashbacks have, which then contrasts the real, honest foley and ambience of the present. Going back to narrative significance, do you remember that track I discussed earlier? Henry Burr and the Pillars Quartet's Let Me Call You Sweetheart, that one. Great, because I'm gonna talk about that again. This track is actually a really great choice for this short film, as it has a lot of significance to the plight of Kathy. The song has a verse-chorus type structure, and while the choruses don't really say too much, only really repeating the line, "Let me call you sweetheart, I'm in love with you," with other lines in the chorus sharing the same message, the verses give us a lot to look into. The first verse reads, "I am dreaming dear of you, day by day, dreaming when the skies are blue, when they're grey. When the silvery moonlight gleams, still I wander on in dreams. In a land of love, it seems, just with you." In relation to Fueled, you could most certainly argue that this describes Kathy's tendency to look back on her memories with her husband and how she may idolize them, going back to them for comfort and to escape the grim present she finds herself in. At one point in the short, you could even argue that she literally dreams of these memories, that being when she's knocked out at the gas station and it transitions to a flashback. The idea also complements the way the flashbacks are depicted with the softer, brighter color palette and soundscape, which could be commenting on how Kathy perceives and idolizes them, seeing them as this land of love. The next verse reads, "Longing for you all the while, more and more, longing for the sunny smile I adore. Birds are singing, far and near, roses blooming everywhere. You alone my heart can cheer, you, just you." When put into the context of Fueled, this verse becomes a lot more somber and melancholic in tone. It could be interpreted as Kathy longing for her husband, missing him more by the day. Along with that, the last line, "You alone my heart can cheer," could allude to the idea that Kathy believes he was the only person she could love, which could either be seen as a comment on how deep their love was, or how Kathy is in such a state of grief and mourning that she's mentally unable to consider the idea of moving on and finding someone else. Both, I believe, are incredibly saddening and add a lot to Kathy as a character. On the topic of music, the original tracks composed by Sebastian Rutten are superb and perfectly fit the vibe of the film. They're incredibly subtle at times, but do a lot in establishing the mood of a moment, such as the quirky yet mysterious feel of the opening music when we first see Kathy in her car. And the honest and somber tones when Kathy begins to cry.
Crying, bitch! Where? I don't wanna fucking hear it!
The instrumentation throughout each piece is also very unique and consistent, giving Fueled a distinctive musical style and feel. The use of 808s especially gives a lot of weight to the film, complementing the film's dark atmosphere and themes of death and heartbreak. Wait, 808s, heartbreak. Don't say you will, unless you will. Hey, 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 hey. Fueled premiered onto YouTube on the 1st of December 2021, and it may surprise you to hear that this film didn't get that much of a fanfare when it was released. The chat playback on the YouTube premiere only shows around a handful of people, and it only really seemed to get as far as official selections when it came to participating in film festivals, aside from some of the awards it claims to have won, but I can't seem to find any evidence to back those up. Even despite having millions of views on YouTube, it's still not really that widely recognised by people, and that saddens me. The fact that something so brilliant, so unique, so beautiful can go under the radar of so many people saddens me. Don't get me wrong, Fueled has gone really far and has done really well for a short film, but I still feel it's not fully appreciated enough, and I want to change that. If you're watching this and you already love Fueled, then that's brilliant, I'm happy for you. But if you don't think Fueled is anything particularly special, or even an overrated piece of shit, I implore you, I beg of you, to watch or rewatch the short film for yourself. You can take in the things I've said if you want, but just really look at the art, the sound, the music, the animation, and just breathe it all in, because it really does deserve your attention. You know, throughout looking into the short film and its complexities, I kept wondering to myself about how Fueled came to be. What was the creative process behind this amazing film? What was it like to work on it and be a part of the team? Well, I decided to stick my neck out and contact one of the animators, in hopes to get a better insight on how this marvellous film came to be. And to my surprise, I got a response. Hello, I run a relatively small YouTube channel, and I'm currently working on a video about the 2021 short film Fueled. It's to my knowledge that you worked on this animation, and I was wondering if you would be interested in answering some questions I have regarding the short film's development, reception, and so on to use in the video. No worries if you don't want to though, I completely understand.
Hey, sure, I'd be happy to. Always love to talk about Fueled. We're very proud of it.
Brilliant, thank you so much. To start with, how did you and the rest of the project team come up with the premise and story of Fueled? Was it a collaborative effort, or did someone in particular have the idea?
I didn't really have much to do with the initial story pitch, or really much involvement with the development of the plot, aside from helping to flesh out some ideas further down the line. There were a few people in the group that took on a more directional role, and we knew from the beginning that we wanted our story to be a dramatic tale about two friends/lovers.
That's really interesting. What ideas did you help flesh out?
Oh, I wouldn't really be able to remember anything specifically. Collaboratively, we would throw out ideas here and there, and some would stick and others wouldn't. Even deciding what we didn't want to do was helpful to get the plot moving anyways.
Oh, that's understandable if you can't remember. It was back in 2021 after all. It's still cool to know that the story was formed collaboratively. From what I've seen, you're credited for creating some test animations for Fueled on the KilledTheCat Productions Instagram page, which feature spoken dialogue. Do you remember if dialogue was ever planned for the film? And if so, what was the reasoning behind making the film silent instead?
It was a long time ago. More like 2020 actually. We had to wait almost a year to actually release it while we were competing in film festivals. There was so much pre-production work. The animation tests you're referring to were school assignments done in tandem with the pre-production process of the film. If I remember correctly, we were split into teams of layout/animation, and each had to do corresponding tests. I think it was a requirement that the animation tests had audio for lip sync purposes. I don't think we ever planned to have dialogue in the film, as to avoid spoken exposition. In other words, we wanted the animation to speak for itself. Could also be that our budget went to our composer Sebastian, so we didn't want to pay for voice actors.
Wow, so the film was being worked on since 2020. Was Fueled competing in film festivals the primary reason the release was delayed so much, or were there other reasons, e.g. COVID? Did Fueled end up winning any awards from these film festivals? The choice to not include dialogue and focus more on the animation was a really good one. I think it helps the film a lot. The decision to put the budget towards Sebastian instead of hiring VAs I also think was brilliant, and he did a great job with the film's music.
Since the start of the third year of September 2020, yep. I think we even finished a little bit early, which was nuts considering how invasive the filmmaking process was. I don't believe COVID had any impact. We were all working remotely by then, and Discord was our main form of communication. We actually had 0 in-person meetings. The whole thing was orchestrated online. We won at least 10 awards/laurels/runner-ups for Fueled, one of them being Best Thriller at Mentone Film Festival, which we got an award for. It's in the care of our team lead Michelle, I believe. In general, When you submit a film in a festival, you aren't permitted to release it elsewhere, so we had to wait for that to run its course before the big YouTube upload in December.
That's amazing that you actually got a trophy from one of these film festivals, not to mention that the film was all done online. Considering you were one of the many visual development artists working on Fueled, what was the creative process when deciding how the film should look? Were there any inspirations or influences?
I was involved in the development of the characters' appearances rather than the overall look/mood/colour palette of the film. The layout team was more so responsible for those things, so I can't speak to them in great detail. We went through a similar voting process when deciding on characters as we did when deciding the story. I believe the prompt was Angry Catwoman that drives a car. I will include my iteration of Kathy to this message, which also includes some of my preliminary ideas for the setting and mood. The layout team went through the same process, and after lots of colour tests we decided on a palette and setting. A lot of inspiration was taken from real-world photography as well as illustrations, screenshots from various animated media, and lots of other student films. We really pulled inspiration from 1,000 different places, so it's hard to place just one or even a few that were major sources of inspiration. Several of us actually went to real-world gas stations to take reference photos for those harder angles. They were really dedicated team players. This was my interpretation of Hubby. Everyone decided that we needed to make him less kind/goofy and more handsome and suave like the Baron from The Cat Returns, so the viewer would have more empathy. Hee.
Whoa, those early iterations of Kathy and Hubby are fascinating. It's always great seeing early versions of characters and how they evolved over time, especially Hubby and how he went from quite silly to a more sophisticated character. The examples of setting and mood you gave are also interesting considering how close they were to the final outcome. The fact that some of the project members went to actual gas stations for reference photos is also crazy to hear. It goes to show how passionate people were with this project. From looking at the Instagram page, there seems to be quite the positive atmosphere surrounding this film. What was it like to work on the film with the other members day to day? Do you have any particularly fond memories?
The vibes surrounding this film have been overwhelmingly positive, despite the grim nature of the story itself. We would schedule weekly meetings to get everyone up to speed and to go over our revisions and new assignments. Some people would hop in a general VC, or what we called the virtual studio, to work together on their scenes. We relied heavily on our team lead spreadsheets to keep us on track. There are hundreds of whips posted on our various Discord channels for other members to look over, critique, look for mistakes, or just to compliment the work. I think back on this whole experience fondly. There aren't any big moments that stick out to me, because it was all such a good time. Everyone had great humour and we made up our own personal memes about Fueled, so we'd be animating Kathy bleeding out while posting stuff like this.
That's brilliant. I'm glad to hear it was such a great experience. Now, moving more into the conclusion of the project and the release of Fueled, were you satisfied with the final outcome of the film? Is there anything you would go back and change if you were able to?
Personally, Fueled exceeded any expectations I had going in. Given how hard it is to imagine crossing the finish line when you've just started a huge 9-month project, I was just hoping we'd have something to hand in at the end of the year. But as soon as we started animating and scenes started coming together, I realised quickly what we could accomplish. The reception to Fueled was bigger than any of us could have thought. We were so excited when the film broke 100k, and I can't even believe that it surpassed the 10 million views it has now. Seeing all the fan art and video edits and all the thoughtful comments from viewers really made those grueling, long and late hours worth it. I think we executed the idea we had as well as we could, given the time limits and our resources, so I don't think there's anything I would want to go back and change.
Yeah, Fueled's reception has been insane, and it's well deserved. It's nice to know the film exceeded expectations for you. As for my final question, what would you say to those who are interested in getting into animation and or making a short film of their own? Would making a short film help in their career, and if so, how?
I improved so much, even just over the 8 or 9 months Fueled was in production, and I attribute most of that growth to the film. I don't think I would have ever attempted working on a group film had it not been required by Sheridan, let alone tried to do anything like that by myself. So for most people, I would say making a short film solo is not for the weak of heart, but can absolutely be done. My thesis film, while nowhere near as cinematic or story-driven as Fueled, was done solo and was a tool utilised to make great advancements in my skills. It fleshed out my portfolio and helped me get job offers straight out of school. So for sure, a short film could help someone advance their career, especially if it's an orchestrated effort with many people working on it. Fueled definitely got us noticed by the larger animation world. I would advise new animators to start smaller and practice often. Don't compare yourself to your peers and instead look to them for inspiration and guidance. For me and many others, the animation meme community was the stepping stone into the world of animation, and I think it's a great place to start. If you are consistent enough in your practicing, you may be in a position to work on your own group film someday or have a career in the industry.
And that's Fueled, everybody! Yeah! This video was a lot longer than I thought it'd be. But, you know, here we are. I don't even know, half an hour in. Thank you for watching through all of it, if you have. And I hope it was insightful or interesting at the very least. I hope this video has made you look at Fueled a bit differently, or made you want to look into Fueled more. There's so much about this short film that no one really seems to talk about. I mean, everyone praises the short film. It's gotten so much attention, don't get me wrong. But I feel like there's a lot more people could be praising about it than what is actually said. So hopefully this video kind of opens people's eyes a bit to everything in Fueled. I just wanted to thank some people that kind of helped make this video come to life. Special thanks to Mr. Rodeer on YouTube, who actually suggested the idea for the video. It was a really good suggestion. Yeah, just thank you for commenting and suggesting it. If you guys have any more suggestions of pieces of media or topics I could cover, then feel free to let me know in the comments, because, you know, I'd love to hear more suggestions, you know. Also, thank you to Georgia Quinn, also known as Jaegers, who was the person I interviewed and was an animator on Fueled. Thank you for allowing me to have the opportunity. It was really insightful, and I really appreciate them taking time out of their day to kind of answer the questions I had. So that's really nice of them. I really thank them for that. Thank you to Look It's Gem. She's a good friend of mine and did the voiceovers for the responses Jaegers gave, and she did a really great job. Thank you to Tumbleweed for proofreading the script a bit. That was really nice, just helping me kind of build a bit more confidence in my script, making sure everything I was saying was clear. And also, this is going to sound really cheesy, but thank you, KilledTheCat Productions, for making Fueled in the first place. I know it was like a student project, but it really is like something truly special. So I thank everyone who helped work on the film. Speaking of KilledTheCat Productions, I just wanted to give a brief like where are they now type segment to kind of give you an idea of where some of the members might be after Fueled, that I could find anyway. This might be wrong, but this is what I could decently find with some of the members. Michelle Howe is now a full-time storyboard artist, and he published his thesis film Go to Sleep a year after Fueled in 2022. Jisoo Kim published his thesis film, Something Special, in 2023, I presume. Not too confident on the date. Aruna Kaney has worked at well-known animation studios like Bento Box and Titmouse. Ido Hayashi works at The Line Animation Studio in London, a studio you may not know by name, but you may be familiar with some of the work they've done, because they've done work for Channel 4, Gorillaz, and even Overwatch 2, which is insane. Emily Zhu are apparently a storyboard artist for fucking Walt Disney Animation Studios. I'm not kidding. And they've also released their thesis film, Under the Luminous Sky. All of these thesis films, by the way, will be in the description below if you're interested in watching them. All the links to these people's websites will hopefully be in the description as well. Georgia Quinn has an internet presence and does commissions. Daniel Blake is a storyboard and comic artist. And Sebastian Rutan got demolished in a 10-car pile. So yeah, if you like this video and want to see more from me, feel free to subscribe. I really do appreciate it. Likes and comments are also really appreciate it. I just love hearing back from you guys and seeing what you guys thought of the video. It's nice to know like what you guys liked, what you didn't like. It all helps to improve my content. I also have a Twitter. I don't really do much on the Twitter, but I have a Twitter, so you could follow me there. But anyway, that's enough from me. Thank you for watching.